Hello, and welcome to the 21st of Decem-Baron 2020. And I thought I'd share some more of my poems. This time, poems and other bits of writing that I wrote in college. So, I'm basically going to start from my freshman year of college and go up from there. There were several different reasons why I wrote poetry, or little short stories, or whatever, in college, whether it be because I was inspired by something, maybe it was for a contest, what have you. My freshman year, my first year, I have a couple of different samples. One of them is called Cheesy Twilight Entries because I attempted to. This is more of like a. It's not really a poem. It's more of a long story, and I kind of feel cringy. There was this contest, all right, about to see who could write the most like the most overly teemingly emotional kind of thing to kind of make fun of the Twilight books by Stephanie Meyer, right? Yeah, so I made some vignettes and whatever. One of them, let's see. Let me see. Here is one of them. One short paragraph. There it is. I held my breath and exhaled slowly. I had worked hard on my audition, just like last year. The thing is, I didn't make the cut last year, and I hoped against hope that wouldn't be the case this time. I took the plunge and started to read. At first I glanced over the list, failing to see my name anywhere. In a slight panic I started again, quite sure that I had just missed my name. Then it hit me. I was left drenched in disappointment. I took another deep breath. What could I have done differently? I did not win anything in that contest. They even for what I was trying to do, they weren't that great. I do have this lovely little piece that I wrote my first year of college. I titled it Snowflakes, and I literally was just sort of inspired as I was walking, sort of like on those days on campus where I was walking down and I just saw like the fluffy snowflakes falling lazily down, and I came across this, and I sort of like created this phrase that was full of alliteration, and I'll give some emphasis, but I also wrote a little before and after it to give a little bit of context. So here's the piece again titled Snowflakes. I love to look at snowflakes, especially when they drift slowly down in small, gentle clusters. They are especially beautiful at night when light shines on them in midair. One night, I thought about these snowflakes as I watched them fall. I was struck by the fact that each individual snowflake is exactly that, individual and unique. How is it possible? How is that possible with so many of them over all time? I also realized that while each snowflake is unique, there are several attributes that every snowflake shares. They are all made of frozen water, they each have 6 sides, and most importantly, they all come from the same source. I saunter blithely down the blustery byway, allowing a few friendly snowflakes to savor the sweet, sensational company of my eyelashes, while many more members bounce beautifully off of my fantastically frigid face. My family is dear to me. I might as well love them because I'm stuck with them and they are stuck with me. In fact, they stick with me. I feel their love and appreciation more than any other people I know. I'm so grateful to have their sweet, unconditional company. Many more people have influenced my life and will continue to do so. I'll feel their influence and support all the time. Yet, they are all people. Why these people? I didn't choose my classmates, roommates, or my family, or so forth. They could have been anywhere. It could have been anyone, any person, and yet it turns out to be them. God can control the breeze that brings the snowflakes onto my face. I would also have to be at the right place for certain snowflakes to touch my life. Throughout all this, I can choose to walk quickly to my next engagement, or savor the beauty of the snowflakes that my Father in heaven has given for his children to know how much he loves them. So yeah, that's the piece. I was feeling especially, poetic and inspired and that sort of thing, and that's a lovely thought that came to me my freshman year of college. Moving on, so between my freshman year and my first year and my second year of college, I I took a break from college to I took a 2 year leave from college to do a full time volunteer mission for the church for my church. I was assigned to an area, and I served as a teaching and proselyting missionary there for 2 full years. This was it was a completely voluntary, unpaid thing. In fact, me and my family had to support this mission. But it was a very challenging and fulfilling experience, honestly. Um, Maybe stories from that mission will be another time if anyone cares about hearing those. But in any case, one bit of writing that I made on my mission while I was a missionary was something I called Psalm of the Righteous, where basically, I'm not going to read the whole thing, it's rather lengthy, but essentially what I did was I took all 340, all the titles of all 340 something hymns in the Latter-day Saint hymn book, and I took the titles and I made it so that it would all sound like scripture made almost entirely of just those hymn titles. I was curious how that would sound. I'll read a couple of the verses. And again, it's just taking the titles in order from 1 to 340, 341 or something. And it kind of like goes from one topic to another because the hymns in that hymn book are organized by subject or topic. Again, I'll read a couple of the... I'll read a few small selections here. The morning breaks, the Spirit of God shines forth as the brilliant dawn, and now let us rejoice the truth eternal high on the mountaintop. The Redeemer of Israel cries, Israel, Israel, God is calling, awake and arise. Come, rejoice. Come sing to the Lord what is witnessed in the heavens. 'Twas witnessed in the morning sky, an angel from on high. Sweet is the peace the gospel brings, for I saw a mighty angel fly. What glorious scenes mine eyes behold. I will skip down to where the Christmas hymns come in. Here we go. How great the wisdom and the love of Jesus, once of humble birth. O Savior, thou who wearest a crown on that Easter morn, saints and angels have cried, He is risen! Christ the Lord is risen today to give joy to the world. O come, all ye faithful, and witness angels we have heard on high. On a silent night, once in royal David's city was the Christ born, away in a manger. It came upon a midnight clear, O little town of Bethlehem. Hark! The herald angels sing with wondering awe, while shepherds watch their flocks by night, far, far away in Judea's plains. Gather and celebrate the first Noel. I heard the bells on Christmas Day. Ring out, wild bells. We are sowing the good news of Christ Jesus. Come, let us anew our joyous strains, and so on and so forth. It goes on for a couple, several pages. So I won't bore you with the rest of it. But it's kind of interesting how like a lot of hymn titles just sort of flowed one into another. I imagine just using like titles of like songs or something like that, or titles of something else with this same sort of approach could yield some interesting results. I just happened to use it for religious hymns while I was a missionary. I wrote a few things as a sophomore, my second year of college. I won't really read any of those. They're more like short stories. And there are several personal details in those that I do not wish to share here. But I will move on to, and so there wasn't really any like poetry and actually, I think I might share a short story that I wrote. It's actually kind of a lengthy one. I'll see what time I have after I finish everything else I want to share. My senior year though, or like my last few years, I wrote a series of poems for a particular class. And in this class, it was for my major for English linguistics, and so it combined literature and language. And it was a really fun class. We looked at a lot of different things regarding literature, language, linguistics. They used to this sort of thing used to be called philology at one point. And so we often had to we were often asked to write poems in the class that pertained to certain different formats, right? And these formats were rather obscure. I'm not talking necessarily about like Shakespearean iambic pentameter. I'm talking about like things like I guess there's an English penfear, Greek iambic triameter, like a Sanskrit form, Sanskrit Veda meter, Somali Masafo, Italian Endecastelabo, Beowulf meter, and I have explanations for each of these things and whatever, like, where the stresses should be and all that. But I won't share all the details about all of that unless you really, really are interested in that. I'll just share the poems. So, first of all, an English penfear. A mission done quite well, a vision done. This vision leads to others, one of fathers and mothers. The next one I called Haiku Hall. This was sort of inspired by, this is less of it's less about syllables, and more about like something called more or mora or whatever, things like that. Basically, a more or a mora is a individual parts of a word. For example, sing has two parts. Wait, hold on. It's kind of like not exactly syllables. I don't remember exactly, but like sing is more than one because there's a sing. There's like sing, things like that. It still has like a 5-7-5, but it's more like yeah. So true Japanese haikus focus more on like more. I called this haiku hall because after that sort of tradition of like like back in the time of of like Vikings and things, and those sorts of people, they had their grand halls, right? And you go in and people would share tales in exchange for boarding sometimes, as far as I remember. So here's what that poem is. Sing for us. A guest is coming hence. Words for roof. Next I have what is called a Greek iambic triameter. I've fought good fights. In ease, I need to find some more. So that's iams in like, I think like groups of 3 iams. I fought good fights in ease. I need to find some more. So again, an iam is stressed followed by unstressed. I am. So I fought good fights in ease. I need to find some more. I love these. I love like these sort of poetry. Like poetry structure is fascinating to me. I could talk more about that kind of thing. But moving on to one in a sort of a Sanskrit form here. Don't lose hope. Don't give in. But in this, do not in finding look down. Sing. Next I have one called in a Sanskrit Veda meter. And this is actually inspired by something from the book of scripture called the Book of Mormon. But I'll read the poem for you. Noah, he was a selfish king. Benjamin was a servant king. What did they both accomplish? Towers have they built. One to escape, but one to teach. So that talks about. So that is in reference to a couple of people described in the Book of Mormon, King Noah and King Benjamin. And King Noah was a bad, wicked, selfish king, while King Benjamin was a far more selfless person and actually a benevolent teacher to his people. So. That was the subject of that particular poem. Again, if you want to know more about the stories of King Noah and King Benjamin, whatever, I could certainly share them, but that's not the point here. Let's see. We next have So here's something that's in a, I guess it's called Somali Masafo. I'm going to edit it a little bit to keep some of my personal information safe. So again, excuse some tweaking there if you for some reason know anything about Somali Masafos. Anyway, my name, Baron. My aim, improving. Another one. The next one is called Italian Endicastelabo. It roars like fire, its sides as smooth as glass. It runs like lightning's flash as valleys pass. That is about a train that I have ridden before in the past. So I like riding. I like riding trains as public transit. It's rather fun, I think. And then finally, I have a strong stress alliterative meter. I guess in quotation marks Beowulf meter. This is a sort of a riddle poem where you have to kind of guess what the poem's referring to. After I read this poem, I will wait a few seconds, allowing you time to pause the video if you want to kind of guess what this poem is talking about. And then after this few seconds, I will reveal the answer, the intended answer anyway. Remote spittoon ejects, eschews, watching people eating, snacking. You give money, ice cream tumbled down, gobbling your currency into emptiness. 3, 2, 1. The answer is a vending machine, if that wasn't obvious. I like the sort of imagery of a vending machine eating your money, basically. Which actually, I believe, was shown once in the second Pajama Sam video game, actually. Wait, no, not a vending machine. That was a card reader that ate a card. Whatever. Anyway, so yeah, that is poetry that I wrote in college. So now I have this 16-page short story that I think I might actually read for you guys. This is I'm very proud of this, actually. Even from back then, this is just something that I developed over time, like in my head for a few years beforehand. Then I had the opportunity to write it, like this in a creative writing class. So I will conclude this today's bit of today's episode of Decem-Baron 2020 with this short story, which I titled Chicago, 1929. The Roaring Twenties were almost over, and it ended with a bang. The last Tuesday in October that year proved to be the blackest in American history. Cecil Kelly was the great tap-dancing sensation of Chicago. He was very well received by dozens of sold-out crowds come to admire his precision of step and technical prowess. He was a dazzler on the stage. It was said of him that he would rehearse for hours until he felt his act was twice as polished as his tap shoes. He was sought after by the biggest producers of the theater and film. Cecil Kelly was such a celebrity. He was. Now, Cecil Kelly is walking the streets, all dressed up in his sharp black suit and slick black hair and no place to go. If he's as crushed in this financial crisis as everyone else is, his expression didn't show it. He has always been known to show very little emotion. Occasionally he'd give a small smirk of satisfaction when something pleased him, but he was generally all business all the time. It is true what everyone said of him. Much of his success as a tap dancer came from the countless hours of focused rehearsal and shameless scrutiny of every moment of every routine. His precision of step and attention to detail went unmatched in the entire city of Chicago, and as he received tremendous praise and admiration from every audience and critic, he always found something in his performance that needed further improvement. But there's no need to waste time rehearsing an act that won't have an audience. Once Black Tuesday hit, he knew his performing days were numbered. Of all the industries in Chicago, he thought the first to go would be the luxurious business of show business. Sure enough, in a matter of weeks, his audiences became smaller and quieter. Now, a month after the catastrophe, he was out of the job. Cecil Kelly! Cecil Kelly! Cecil turned, roused from his thoughts. The stranger walking up to him was wearing the outfit of a construction worker. He appeared to be about 50 years old, about a decade and a half older than Cecil. "The name's Reggie. Reggie Davis. I have long admired your tap shows, though I haven't been able to afford a ticket recently. But I wanted to tell you what a great performer you are." Ah, Cecil thought. Another adoring fan. Quite honestly, he wasn't in the mood to receive praise. It was a fresh reminder that he had likely used his tapping shoes for the last time. Nevertheless, he was always courteous and cordial to spontaneous admirers. "Thank you, Mr. Davis, but please, call me Reggie. Mr. Davis is my father's name." "All right, Mr. Reggie. I really appreciate your generous praise, but I regret to inform you that I am no longer in the stage business." Reggie's expression became sympathetic. "When did that happen?" "Last week. Live entertainment has suddenly become a luxury no one can afford." "I'm very sorry to hear that." "Well, I suppose it can't get much worse than this anyway." There was a pause in the conversation, and Cecil was about to take his leave when Reggie spoke again. "Cecil, I've often wondered, how did you get started in tap?" There was no reply for several seconds as Cecil searched his memory for an answer. "Well," he said at last, "I had an uncle who was an avid tap dancer. He never danced professionally, but he was nevertheless quite competent. He would dance for friends and families on occasion, and I asked him to teach me. That's where it all started, way back when. It soon became another hobby for me." "Another hobby?" "Yes, I also took singing lessons from my mother at the time." "You can sing and you can dance? A double threat." Cecil humbly shrugged. "Well, people seemed to be more impressed with my steps than my voice, so eventually I just quit singing altogether and focused on tap. It's done well for me so far, until now." Reggie was fascinated with this new revelation about the famous, though private, Cecil Kelly. "So, you don't sing anymore?" Cecil shook his head. "No, not anymore." "Do you ever miss it?" "Sometimes," Cecil said after some thought. "Yes, sometimes I do miss it. I think if I had the chance, I would sing again." Cecil saw a light come on in Reggie's eyes. "What if I told you that I could give you the chance?" Cecil raised an eyebrow. He, of course, had labeled Reggie as a blue-collar, judging by his old overalls, and didn't expect such a man to give such an offer. How often does one see a blue-collared worker providing more opportunities for a white-collar? Reggie could sense his skepticism. Even so, Cecil said in reply, "I'm listening." "I have a special project that I've been planning for years. I don't have the time to explain it all right now, but it would be an honor and a pleasure to have you come to my home for lunch this afternoon. I can explain everything to you then, and let you think it over after that." "All right. Tell me where and when." At his desk that very same morning, a young man named William found himself drowning in paperwork. Everyone else at the bank displayed a very real sense of chaotic order, or what was left of it. There was a run on the bank, and the bank itself was barely able to stay afloat in the catastrophe. William did his best to act like he knew what he was doing, but he didn't. In fact, he was lucky to have retained his banking job for the past month. Recently married, just out of school, and feeling quite insecure next to the banking giants he found himself working with, he had survived the economic crash thus far, and he had a real hope that he would make it out of this disaster alive. That very day, however, the flood of papers and notes on William's desk disintegrated into a single pink slip of paper. He found himself out of work, his hopes of survival shattered. The thought that plagued his mind was, "What will I tell Ellen?" He was found half an hour later, sitting on an empty street corner with his head on his knees, shivering in the autumn air, his dread pink slip in a crumbled lump inside his fist. He almost wondered if he could come back home at all. He was much too ashamed to tell his wife that he was out of work. To him, there were fewer circumstances in life more humiliating and shameful than to be unable to provide for the needs of his own family. His family doesn't even need much. It's just him and Ellen in their modest apartment. This whole situation wouldn't be so bad if the market hadn't crashed. There's no one hiring, only a mass emigration to unemployment as companies work to cut their losses in order to survive. In business dealings, it's all about the good of the company. These and other bitter, hopeless thoughts occupied William's mind until he was startled by an older voice. "What are you looking at down there?" What really startled him was the unmasked cheerfulness of the voice, a strange sensation in his present circumstances. Reggie Davis had a habit of spending at least one idle hour a day taking a leisurely walk through the streets of the city. He was on his way back from such a stroll when he met Cecil Kelly that same morning. 5 blocks later, he found a young man clearly in distress. "Oh, nothing," William replied. The older man seemed unconvinced. There was a touch of a smile on his lips that expressed kindness and understanding. "I don't mean to be rude," the man said at last, "but I do mean to be honest. Those tears don't go well with such a fine-looking suit." William hadn't noticed the tears on his face. He felt his damp cheek with a cold hand and wiped his tears away. "From my wife," he responded, "for our anniversary." The man took another look at William's black pinstriped suit, his crisp white shirt, and bright red tie. "She must really care about you. You are a very lucky man to have a woman love you that much." William gave a weak nod of agreement. He remembered clearly the day Ellen presented the gift only 2 months before. At that moment, William had made an unspoken promise to be the very best husband he could ever be, to be worthy of such a gift given with so much love and so much sacrifice. Now, in this dismal situation, he cannot hold to that promise. He has no career and no way of providing for her needs or his. Oh, what would he tell Ellen? The man stood up and extended a hand to introduce himself. "My name is Reggie Davis." William took Reggie's hand and allowed himself to be pulled to his feet. William Blaine, sir." Reggie chuckled. "I haven't been called sir in years." Then William noticed Reggie's attire. He wore an old set of overalls and a dirty white shirt. He was clearly a construction worker. What a picture this was! Who would have thought a blue-collared worker lifting a white-collared man to his feet? "I got laid off myself," Reggie said, "a few days ago, though this isn't the first time it's been done to me. Is your wife expecting you home now?" "No, I didn't tell her yet." William was ashamed to admit it. He didn't like the idea of keeping a secret from his own dear wife. "Then I'll offer you lunch at my home. I know the thing a man needs most at a time like this is a friend who understands." Thanks. Thank you. That means a lot to me." "I know I would appreciate it if I were in your position. Besides, I think you can help me with a special project I've been planning for a while. We'll talk about it over lunch." Punctuality was a trait valued by both Cecil Kelly and William Blaine, so they both arrived at Reggie's home at about the same time. Cecil endured another round of admiration and praise from a stranger. William explained that he proposed to Ellen after treating her to a nice dinner and a Cecil Kelly show. "Always pleased to be of service," Cecil smirked somewhat sarcastically. "I'm glad to take part in such a worthy cause." As much of a celebrity as he was, at his age he had yet to experience the blessing of matrimony that William now enjoyed. The men shared lunch in a rather unexpected setting. A run-down dinner theater. Reggie's home. He had fixed some beef stew and sweet-tasting cornbread for them. Chairs and a table were set up in what would have been the main lobby of the theater. As they ate the savory meal, Reggie explained to Cecil and William that his father had owned the dinner theater until he met serious financial trouble resulting from too many dishonest business dealings. The theater's reputation suffered with its owner, and it had been closed for nearly 30 years. And Reggie had inherited what was left of the building. Reggie Davis had met many disappointments over the years, yet despite all that, he faced life with an irrepressible optimism. Reggie had to drop out of college after his father's business failed, so he went into construction work. He also mentioned his divorce from an unfaithful wife in the midst of a vicious cycle of employment and unemployment. Now, at age 49, he lives alone in his shabby inheritance. Through it all, he remained optimistic and hopeful. Even more amazing was Reggie's radical idea to restore the old dinner theater, what many had deemed a lost cause. William was fascinated. Cecil remained quiet throughout the whole life story. "How long have you been planning to restore this place?" William asked. "Oh, several years now," Reggie replied, "but I hadn't been able to find a way to do it. I need volunteers, and few people have accepted my proposal." "And you still want to fix this place up, even after all these times?" Cecil asked. At first, I didn't, especially when the banks failed. Once that happened, the project seemed impossible. But one day I realized it is possible, even now. More than ever, in fact. Businesses and banks are shut down. Half the men in Chicago are unemployed. Bread lines often span whole blocks. Now more than ever, people are in need of one precious necessity that no amount of wealth can provide for, and that is hope. Hope in the future and hope in the present. Too many unemployed men spend their extended vacation wishing for better circumstances, and that only makes them more miserable. They need something to do. They need to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They need a common goal to work towards to help them forget their less than fortunate conditions. Everyone is downcast, and they need a reason to look up. William seemed to give Reggie's words some serious thought. It was hard to read Cecil's expression. And besides, he continued, gesturing first to William, then to Cecil, then to himself, you need work, you need a venue, and I need volunteers. It couldn't be more perfect. It was indeed a lofty goal, with an even loftier cause. William gave the proposal some more thought. He really didn't have much to lose at this point, but more importantly, he felt Reggie could see something in him. It seemed that Reggie could see in him more potential than he could see in himself. He felt he could really make a noticeable, valuable, and worthwhile contribution here, unlike the gigantic corporation of the banking business. For the first time in his life as a working man, William felt needed and important. What was more, he could go home to Ellen with good news. William was ready to accept Reggie's proposal, and the hope in his eyes was evidence of this. Reggie looked at Cecil again. He couldn't quite tell if Cecil was simply skeptical, or seriously considering his proposal, or just thought him mad. Finally, Cecil voiced his concerns. What makes you think people will actually show up to your theater, Mr. Reggie? No one can afford the luxury of high entertainment anymore. That's why I'm out of my job in the first place. You do have a point, Reggie replied. But I don't really believe that's the case. I honestly believe there are some people out there who were wise with their resources and weren't hit very hard by this financial disaster. Those people will still pay for a good night out with good company, good food, and good entertainment. So you're not daunted by the economic crash? I'll admit I was for a time, but now I see an opportunity to help people improve their circumstances. How do you figure that? As I said before, the unemployed men in Chicago would be more than happy to find work, even if their only pay was the work itself. I've noticed that when people get together and all work for and believe in a common purpose, they begin to forget their troubles and worries and stress. They become happier. I do see your point, Mr. Reggie, but forgive me for remaining skeptical. Quite honestly, I don't blame you. But I say, give it a chance. Let's give it a try. Cecil took a few moments to sort his mind around the proposal and whether or not it would be wise to become invested in Reggie's project. He looked at William and received a look that said, "It sounds like a wonderful idea, doesn't it?" He found the young man rather naive, but persuasive. At length, he closed his eyes, drew in a deep breath, exhaled through his nostrils, looked at Reggie, and said, "All right, Mr. Reggie, let's give it a try." With William Blaine and Cecil Kelly on board, the three men became the chief executives of the old theater. Reggie served as the owner, the president, and the manager. William was vice president over all finances and other assets, and Cecil was the artist in residence. All three took a very active role in the restoration itself. Soon, they recruited a handful of volunteers and their families who, as Reggie had predicted, didn't care so much about the lack of pay as they did about keeping busy. Reggie's years of experience in construction were invaluable, as most of the men and women who worked, save a carpenter and an electrician, hadn't so much as picked up a hammer and nails before committing to this project. Cecil Kelly found himself quite inadequate in this field as well, but he helped where he could. Then, about a week and a half into the process, it became clear that labor wasn't enough. They needed more wood, plaster, tile, electric wire, and more. Of course, Reggie had known all along he didn't have the funds to provide for these necessary supplies, but he had hoped that God would provide a way. This was an issue he and William had talked over several times, and neither of them knew where the money would come from. Then Cecil approached them with a solution. "Well," he said one day, "it seems I'm not much use around here with all your tools." "Cecil," Reggie countered, "you are more help than you realize." "But I can do more, Mr. Reggie. Up until now, I was only along for the ride. Today, I've decided to become completely invested in this project. He then proceeded to write a number on a piece of paper and handed it to William, who took it and read it, with Reggie looking on. They looked at the number for a second, and after staring at the unbelievable sum, their heads simultaneously turned toward Cecil's direction. Cecil smiled. He found their frozen expressions of shock quite amusing. William stared at the paper again, still wondering if what he had seen was really what he thought he had seen. Cecil began to answer their unspoken questions. I was raised on the principles of financial security, thrift, common sense, and a healthy sense of skepticism. My parents were very skeptical of the banking system and only used it when they really needed to. We kept some of our savings in a bank, but the rest of it was kept in a safe inside our house in the event of a general economic turmoil. They were, indeed, very wise with their resources, and we were always very well off because of it. Having said all that, I've come to really believe in this project of ours. Therefore, it is only appropriate that I give what I can to the cause. Cecil, Reggie said, nearly overcome with emotion. This means so much to me. God bless you. Indeed, Cecil continued. Contrary to my beliefs, I don't think our meeting on the street was coincidental. Soon after I decided to accept your radical idea, I felt the need to give more of myself than I had been giving. At first, I'll admit, I thought I might just stand off to the side, look busy with a hammer, and wait for the grand opening. But my conscience, or inner voice, or whatever you want to call it, told me otherwise. After some thought, I knew what I needed to do. Of course, I'll still do what little I can with the actual restoration itself, but that's a given. This sum that I give to you now represents my commitment to our lofty project. Reggie stood and shook Cecil's hand in both of his own. Welcome aboard, Cecil, he said. I'm happy to be of service, Reggie. At the bank, William had seen fairly large numbers before, and though he had adequately learned all the essential financial formulas and principles, he had less confidence in applying them in practice. He had never single-handedly managed such a large sum of money, and he had a real fear of making a grave miscalculation. But with Cecil's consent and Reggie's encouragement, he continued his work as the manager of finances. And though he had trouble putting it into words, he was also very grateful for Cecil's generous donation, but for a more personal reason. With newfound hope and optimism, he viewed this new challenge as a chance to develop that potential Reggie seemed to see in him. It felt much more liberating to work among friends without the anxiety of competition or the frustration of being undervalued. Under his former circumstances, the only reason William came to work was to earn the money he and Ellen needed to keep out of poverty. Before he was fired from his real paying job, he needed the job more than they needed him. Now he worked at a place that desperately needed him, and he felt so blessed to be an integral part of it. Most anyone would agree that the 1920s was the best of times, and Black Tuesday had come to America the very worst of times, just before the season of Christmas. William was at a loss about what to give to Ellen. What could he possibly give her to show just how much he cares? There was no way he could afford anything like the suit she had given him back when such a luxury was possible. He yearned for a way to express his devotion, but he was never much in the way of words. He felt a lot like Della and Jim in The Gift of the Magi, which happens to be Ellen's favorite Christmas story. That's it! With Reggie's permission, William took for himself a chunk of wood that got broken off from a doorframe in the main lobby. With the carpenter's help, he cut, shaped, and sanded the wood into 2 small hair combs. He took the combs and painted them solid black to match Ellen's hair. Then, he carefully painted a tiny poinsettia flower on the corner of each comb. After admiring his labor of love, he attached a note that read, "To you from your Jim. Merry Christmas, Ellen. I love you." On Christmas morning, William presented the gift to his wife, who, after admiring the combs and reading the note, nearly shrieked with joy. Or was it laughter? "Oh, my sweet William," she said. "What a beautiful coincidence! You won't believe what I have to give you." She gave him a small gold watch chain. It was her grandfather's. She and William had the same old story in mind. The young couple embraced, just as Della and Jim must have done, in equally despondent financial circumstances. Reggie decided he would spend his Christmas morning working alone in the dinner theater. He did a few small jobs here and there, making each little corner of the building a little cleaner and brighter, just as he always tries to do for the lives of those he met. He spent Christmas morning with his hope and his dream. His project had begun to look more and more like a reality. What more could he ask for than to have a dream come true at last? Cecil spent Christmas morning alone in his home. Like Reggie, he didn't really have anyone to spend Christmas morning with, but he didn't mind at all. He also wasn't much into Christmas decorating, but he had a modest Christmas tree set up near his fireplace, with a wreath hung on the mantel. After he got a fire going, he started to play Christmas music on his gramophone. As the music played, he danced in his slippers. This private performance was much more subdued than any he ever presented to his audiences. The dance was for pure enjoyment. He also held back on his dancing so he could concentrate on singing. The halls of Cecil Kelly's home were filled with the music of his breathtaking baritone voice. If a celebrity sings and no one is around to hear him, is he still famous? Does it matter that there would be no applause when he finishes? Does this moment contribute any ounce of glory or fame to our famous tap dancer? Does he care? Cecil Kelly didn't care. Just this once, he performed only for Cecil Kelly. Never had any performance brought such joy and fulfillment to him personally as did this spontaneous Christmas gift to himself. That evening, he shared Christmas dinner with Reggie, William, and Ellen in his home. It was certainly a holiday to remember. It seems that after the joy and hope of the holidays wear off, people tend to count their blessings less often. One bleak midwinter morning, after the first week and a half of the year 1930, Cecil walked into the main office of the dinner theater where William and Reggie were waiting for him. It was too early for any of the other volunteers to have showed up yet. Good evening, Cecil. Good morning, Reggie. I think I know why you called us together early this morning. I should say the problem is rather apparent, I'm afraid. Cecil sighed. So it's true you've had a good number of volunteers asking for wages? I'm afraid so. Both William and I have been asked about it. Why do you tell them? I simply remind them that they are volunteers and that none of us are receiving a single penny or profit in this project. But they still ask. It doesn't make sense, William added. Why now? I think the main reason comes from the fact of Cecil's generous financial support. Cecil muttered in frustration. It seems whenever anyone notices money cooking up some progress, everyone wants a piece of the pie. Indeed, Reggie agreed. Well, what do we do? William asked. People are still asking to be paid. We still need their help, and we've got a lot of work to do yet. Let me be clear, Cecil cut in. My donation was given only for the needs of the restoration itself. These good people came on board as volunteers, not paid workers. The moment we start giving wages, we'll have half of Chicago lining up to be hired, and we just can't afford to employ half of Chicago. Cecil brings up a good point, Reggie said. These men and women chose to come here and get involved in restoring this theater as volunteers. They agreed to receive no payment for their work, and they were more than happy to get the chance to work. Wait, William interjected. Won't we have to hire at some point? When we open, we'll need waiters, ushers, cooks, janitors, and so on. But we are far from opening at this point, Cecil responded. Until that point comes, we have this problem to worry about. Fair enough. The three men sat silently for a few moments, pondering. Reggie spoke next. I think we're forgetting something. We haven't yet taken into account our common goal and purpose for this project. To bring hope to people's lives in this turbulent time. I think the real problem is we're beginning to forget this. And I mean the three of us as well as everyone else. These people simply need to be reminded about why they signed up to help in the first place. This project is not about money. It has never been about money. Life itself isn't about money. It is about happiness. That's what we are trying to help these people to have. Hope and happiness now and in the future. Wouldn't you agree? Cecil and William nodded as they listened attentively to Reggie. From start to finish, this is what we will be about, he continued. Even after we open and begin to welcome Chicago into the front doors, even then we will still be all about enriching the lives of the people we meet. When it all comes down to it, this is what matters in the decisions we make as we work together. When Reggie finished, there was again a few moments of silence and reflection. Well, Cecil said at last, it seems we know what we're going to do about this. We will not change the way we will allocate our funds. Now, we just need to tell everyone else. Who is going to do that? William looked at Reggie, who chuckled when their eyes met. I guess I would be the most obvious choice, but I think you should do it. William nearly choked. Me? Why me? I think it would be most effective if the person to relay this kind of message was on the same level as our volunteers. But aren't you as poor as I am? Not entirely. I do own this property, which places me in a slightly higher financial standing than you, as far as society is concerned. In his mind, William was trying desperately to find a good reason to get out of the assignment he was being given. He can work with numbers. He can handle finances, but he has absolutely no confidence in public speaking. Why should that make a difference? We have all been hit hard by the economic crash. Well, Reggie explained, can you imagine Cecil getting up in front of those people and telling them why they won't get the wages they're asking for? Well, no, because he obviously has more money than they do. Indeed. And those good people wouldn't buy into what he said. Wouldn't you agree, Cecil? Yes, you make a very good point, Reggie, Cecil said. Reggie turned back to William. I am very willing to talk to them, but I believe it would be most effective if you talk to them. They know you are in the exact same situation they are in, which puts you in a good position to communicate effectively to them. But I'm not an orator. I'm not much into public speaking. Again, William searched for a way out, but found none. What Reggie said made perfect sense. He greatly admired Reggie and was always more than happy to do for him any sort of favor or give any assistance he can in return for the kindness Reggie had shown to him and his family. At this moment, he knew Reggie was asking for a favor, a substantial favor, one that seemed well beyond his confidence and abilities. William looked at the floor in deep thought. This was one of those moments where a man knows exactly what needs to be done, though the prospect terrifies him. He looked up at Cecil's patient expression, then over to Reggie. He hesitated before he accepted the assignment. I'll need a typewriter to write out what I will say. Cecil and Reggie smiled in admiration. Reggie went into a supply closet in a neighboring office and pulled out an old typewriter for William to use. While everyone else helped on the restoration project, William sat in the office and typed, and thought, and scribbled out words, and stressed, and typed some more. Occasionally he stood, and stretched, and paced, as he thought and stressed some more. He tried to remember all the things he had been told about how to speak well, but there wasn't much to remember. At least very few good ideas came to mind. By the time lunch rolled around, he already had several dozen sheets of paper crumpled up in a corner of the room, and he used up both sides of each page. After all that work, he left the office right where he started, a blank page waiting on the typewriter, thirsty for ink and good ideas. He joined Ellen for lunch. She had come to the dinner theater for another day of restoration work. He told her about his dilemma. I think you're just making it too complicated, Ellen suggested. Why not speak from your heart? Don't worry so much about impressing people, just tell them the truth from your heart. William half chuckled. He knew his young wife well enough to expect this kind of answer from her. She thinks with her heart, a quality he absolutely adores. As he pondered Ellen's advice, he saw the wisdom in it. It was also quite logical. If he was the one who can relate the most to his audience, then why not speak to all of them as if to a single friend, face to face? Why not speak as if only to Ellen? That made the task much easier. William gave Ellen a kiss of gratitude and returned to the office to write. William still struggled in formulating his speech, but it was much easier this time. He sat in front of the typewriter for several minutes, thinking, pondering. Then he began to write. After working through several drafts, he wrote the following. My friends, first, you should know how much you are appreciated. We are all doing good, wonderful work here, and we thank you for working with us here. I understand how hard it is to go without. Times are hard. We all feel it. I feel it. But I have been asked to remind you, that's why we are all here, working together. Please remember why you decided to come here in the first place. We are all here to achieve a common goal. That brings us hope, right? I have felt it. We have all felt it. No one, not even myself or Reggie Davis or Cecil Kelly, are gaining any financial profit from this project. We are here because we want to see this dream accomplished. No one is getting wages. Shh! We will continue to work the way we have been working, thanks to Cecil's generous donation. As you go to work today, please remember why you are here. Thank you. He typed his speech one last time, his final draft. He looked at his work and thought anxiously of the next day when he would deliver his address. It scared him still, but at least he's prepared. The next morning, he stood up in front of the audience of volunteers, looked at each face, each set of eyes and ears, and read straight from his paper. When he finished, he stepped away and went to work. Everyone else soon followed suit without a word. It wasn't until they stopped for lunch that people began to talk about William's message. This was what William was afraid of most, the reviews. However, people got the message. Some admitted they were disappointed at first, but everyone thanked William for speaking to them. All they needed was a reminder of what matters most. William was relieved that everyone accepted what he said. Ellen, of course, showered him with praise, knowing how hard it was for him to go up and speak in a public setting. Reggie and Cecil were very much impressed, and also commended William for his sincere message. William felt it was the best day's work of his life. We all know full well the Great Depression lasted a very long time. Would it surprise you to know the dinner theater took years to finish? There was the hope it wouldn't be such a lengthy endeavor, but for many reasons the restoration wasn't complete until 1934. A lot of it had to do with the skepticism and lack of confidence from many citizens in Chicago. However, as Cecil pointed out, the show must go on. There came a point when Reggie decided to open the property little by little. The first room to be finished was the theater itself. On November 1st, 1930, the property was open only as a theater. People started to come hear Cecil Kelly sing. Other local artists were later invited to perform at the Davis stage. Every few months since then, another part of the building became open to the public. Little by little, people were hired to work as ushers, as janitors, as assistant accountants with William, and as cooks once the kitchen was completed. There was never a grand, pompous opening ceremony for the Davis Dinner Theater, but Reggie Davis was never very grand or pompous in anything he did anyway. Even so, he went to great lengths to express his deep gratitude for all those who helped make the dream possible. The name of each volunteer was soon memorialized in a plaque hung in a prominent location in the main lobby. At this point, there remains little to be said of the successes of Reggie Davis, Cecil Kelly, and William Blaine. The Davis Dinner Theater would become their occupation and their collective passion. William and Ellen Blaine always had what they needed for them and for the 3 children they would later welcome into their lives. Reggie's redemptive vision for his dinner theater stood fulfilled, and would be even when he left the promising establishment in William's capable hands and passed away in 1958. As for Cecil Kelly, he'd found singing to be a much more fulfilling trade, though at times he included some steps with his songs. His purse and his audiences weren't quite as large as they once were, but he was much happier. Cecil became much less reserved and private as he established his voice on the stage. He fulfilled a lifelong dream when he married a widow named Marion, who also possessed a lovely singing voice. The two of them never reached the level of fame and recognition attained by such giants as Frank Sinatra or Bing Crosby, but they would perform for friends and family on occasion. Sometimes they would stay at home and sing together for each other. In essence, our 3 protagonists would go on to live the American dream: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Of course, they would face many more problems, but after overcoming a Great Depression, how much harder could it be? And that is the end of Chicago 1929. I didn't realize until reading it how appropriate it could be, not just for this sort of Christmas season, because there's a few little Christmas scenes in there, but also for the pandemic, right? The pandemic started late in 2019, officially started in late 2019. And this year, 2020, it became a difficult year, just like how 1930 must have been a very difficult year for people. So yeah, that is what I have. I have one thing that I've been meaning to ask in these Decem-Baron videos. I welcome requests. Is there a particular story you want me to share? Is there a particular poem you want me to read? I would gladly do that. I'd love to hear what you'd like me to do. and I will do those requests at a later time this month. So let me know. I did receive one request already, and I will do that, in time. But yeah, that's what I have. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening. Until next time, until tomorrow, all the best.